with Dr. Shorful Islam, Chief Product and Data Officer of Outthink. Dr. Islam will talk to us about building up data science capabilities, when to hire or not to hire data scientists. Dr. Islam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Shorful. I'm going to talk about building data science capabilities and when to hire or not hire data scientists. So what I'll do is I'll go through why companies want to hire data scientists. That's the key question first. To give you some examples from my own experience of where it's gone well and not gone well, and then give you sort of some tips to getting it right. Also get you to consider some key things before you do hire a data scientist, and then a few key takeaways at the end. Okay, so a bit of background about myself before I start. So I've spent most of my career setting up data teams and also advising other organizations on when and how to hire data scientists. So currently I serve as the Chief Product and Data Officer at Outthink. I'm also the Chief Data Scientist at a digital agency called Tribal Worldwide. And I'm also founder of my own analytics consultancy called Subatomic Analytics. In the past, I've also held sort of senior roles in data and insights or data and analytics across Wonderman, Adam and Eve, and ITV. And my background is actually, I have a PhD in psychology. That's where I get the title doctor. And in my PhD, what I did was try to predict why children have accidents. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so why do why do companies want to hire data scientists? And it's not because they want someone who's got maths and stats background, who's got programming skills, who's got good data visualization skills, or has really good domain and soft skills. That's not really the reason why companies hire data scientists. The reason companies hire data scientists is because they have a need. And these are some of the needs or some of the reasons that companies want to hire data scientists, okay? At the outset, it's because they want to be data-driven, okay? So they want to make sure that their organization makes decisions based on data. So they believe that they need to hire data scientists to give them the insights, the outputs, the recommendations that will allow them to make decisions based on data. They also want to get insights from data. So they may feel that currently they're not getting the right type of insight from their data, and they believe bringing in a data scientist will help them with that. And so that's one of the reasons why they may hire data scientists. The other reason may be that they want to build products or data products or products powered by data. So, for example, they may want to build a recommendation engine. So, like Netflix, they might want to build a recommendation engine so that when someone watches a video, they want to recommend another relevant video. So they believe that hiring a data scientist will help them achieve that goal. One of the other reasons could be that they have a lot of data. A lot of companies do collect a lot of data. They've probably not done anything in earnest with it, and they realize that they need to do something with it now. So they hire a data scientist because they have lots of data. There are also reasons that they have been told that they need to hire data scientists. All companies are hiring data scientists. It's the next big thing, and this company feels, oh my God, we're going to fall behind, so we need to hire data scientists. Or they hear that their competitors are hiring data scientists, so they feel that they're missing out on something their competitors are doing, so they feel that they need to hire data scientists. And then finally, actually, one of my clients did do this, is that I helped them hire a couple of data scientists because they wanted to show their shareholders that they were innovating, that they were in a company that was moving forward and was deploying the latest data sort of technologies and stuff. So they hired data scientists because they wanted to show their shareholders that they were an innovative company. Okay, so I just want to give you some examples of how not to do it and how to do it. Okay, so here's an example of how not to do it. So a client I had, they had a digital team, so a team that managed the website. And one of the things they wanted to do was improve the website experience. And they believed that to improve the website experience, they needed to introduce personalization and recommendations onto the website. So they wanted, when people came to the website, to give a more personalized experience. And their solution was, let's hire a data scientist. And that's what they did. They hired a data scientist. But the challenges they had was they hadn't consulted IT. Okay. And one of the reasons that you need to consult IT, which I'll talk about later, is that IT typically own or hold all the systems that collect your internal data. And unless you tell them that you're going to hire a data scientist, you may find that there are barriers within the technology that they haven't accounted for. And in this case, they had. A lot of the systems that collected the data were not designed for the data to be extracted. So IT had to spend a lot of time helping the data scientists get that data. The other problem was they had a rigid CMS. So even if the data scientists could build something, the CMS wouldn't allow them to make changes that would allow personalization on the website, for example. So again, they had to go through looking at new CMSs in order to make sure they could make this happen. And then the other thing they found was that some of their data, or actually a lot of their data, was held by third parties. But what the third party did was they already aggregated it. Now, as data scientists actually need quite granular data in order to build that, especially at the individual transactional level, in order to build things like recommendation engine or personalization. But that data that they needed that was held by the third party had already been aggregated. So they need to work with them to make sure they can get access to the deaggregation, or that the third party gave them a copy of the deaggregated data before they aggregated it. So what happened? So they hired this data scientist, they had these challenged. What happened? So the first six months roughly, the data scientists actually spent hunting for the data. They had to go and find the data that they needed to do it. So they needed to know where the customer data was, where the transactional data was, where the website viewing data was, and try and connect it all up. And then after another 6 months, they actually left. But it wasn't all away. So the data scientists had come in for about 12 months and realized that they were just not doing what data scientists were meant to do. But they did have some achievements. So data scientists usually have quite rounded skills. So they're able to do a lot of things around the data space, but not necessarily are experts at it. So one of the things they were able to do was set up extracts of data. So they were able to make sure that the data that was needed to build recommendation engines or personalization, they were able to find where that data was, and they help with the help of IT were able to set up a routine that allowed them to extract the data that they needed for the analysis. Now, the other thing that they did do was create more advanced reports. And one of the things that happens is that when a business is not used to or not familiar with their data, is that when they get access to some new data, they find that there's quite a lot of new reports that they can get that they hadn't seen before. And this data scientist actually in their last 6 months, that's all they were doing. They were running these really advanced reports because the business had never seen this data before. And suddenly there was someone here who could give them a new view on that data in the form of reports. And that's what the data scientists end up doing for the last 6 months, which is one of the reasons why they left, is because they were just doing reports, which is more suited to a reporting analyst, not a data scientist. So the reason I came in was to help them create a data strategy, and the idea of the data strategy was to help them build a foundation that would eventually allow them to hire a data scientist and to flourish. Okay, so here's an example of how to do it. Okay, sorry, gone on too much. So how to do it. So here we had a marketing team who already had a good reporting team in place. Okay, so the marketing department had a great reporting team in place, and this meant that they had good data because the reports were very robust and reliable, and they had the systems in place to do that. Now, what happened was that the reporting team wanted to do more. So they obviously heard about, what data scientists do, but also in the marketing space, they wanted to build predictive models. They themselves wanted to do some form of personalization. So the first thing that this reporting team did was they upskilled themselves. Okay, so they tried to make sure that they could at least know what it is that you need in order to do these kind of stuff. And with that upskilling, they were able to do some basic projects. But obviously, they weren't data scientists. So once they identified a more complex use case, they decided, now is a good time to hire the first data scientist. Okay, so what happened when they hired that first data scientist? Immediately from day one, the data scientist was able to add value because they weren't going around trying to find the data. They weren't trying to go around talking to IT or third parties. All of that had already been done. All that was already in place. And what they were able to do was deliver insights or they powered marketing initiative with data. Okay, and then what happened was the rest of the business could also see this early success. And they asked the data scientists to come and show them what they did. And so the data scientists went across the business and tried to work across with other departments to show them what they had done in the marketing team, how it could be applied to other parts of the business. And this is where I came in. So they obviously had this data scientist and they wanted to apply it across other parts of the business. And so I came in and helped them take the learnings and try to replicate that within another part of the business, primarily sales. Okay, so if you want to hire a data scientist and you want to get it right, you need to really be thinking about people, process, and technology. Okay, so in terms of people, okay, one of the things that you have to make sure is that you already have some kind of data function in the organization, even if it's just basic reporting. And you don't need necessarily a dedicated reporting team. It could be a team who is in finance or is in the marketing team who runs reports. Okay, and the reason for that is if you are running reports, that means you already have a process in place or people in place who know how to get access to data. The next thing I would advise is that have a senior person who will own this area. And the reason for that is when you bring in a data scientist, they're going to be doing things that the business has not done before, and people will feel uncomfortable with that. And so what you need is someone senior who's going to sponsor, who's going to unlock those doors. So when they go to, let's say, the legal team and say, look, we need to use this data because of this, the legal team might say, oh, hang on, because of GDPR, we can't allow that. Having a key sponsor means that the key sponsor can talk to that legal team and explain to them why they need to do it, what the commercial value is, and offset it against what the risks are of any data protection regulations. Okay. The other thing is find others in the organization who like data. What you don't want is hire a data scientist who's the only person who works with data in the organization. What you really need is to find other people in the organization who like data, who like using data. Okay. So marketing, for example, they might do some market research to find out what consumers do. And you've got people in there who look at those reports. So they're people who actually like data because they're looking at it. Or you might have IT who actually people in IT who want to do stuff with the data, but obviously that's not their function or they don't have the time to do it. So they like data, or in product or in sales or any department really. But you need to make sure that the data scientists, when you bring them in, they're not an island in the organization. They have other people who they can talk to and relate to and talk about data. And then finally, in terms of people, get it on the CEO's agenda, okay? If the CEO knows that you're doing something in data and how it can drive value, whether it's in board meetings or in a separate meeting with the CEO, get it on their agenda so that they care. Then the process, okay? Always have, if you think about hiring a data scientist, make sure that even now you have a process in place that makes sure that data plays a role in decision making. So when you've got choices to make sure that those choices are being informed by data. Okay, so what you need to do is make sure that you have that culture now, that culture of using data to make key decisions. Okay, the next thing is have data governance in place. Okay, now the reason you need this is because what you don't want is a data scientist coming in and finding out, oh God, I can't do this with the data, or I can do that. You should already know what you can and cannot do with your data. Okay, so that the ambitions you have, the plans you have, the strategies you have can be executed. So have some data governance process in place. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be, just knowing what data you hold, what permissions you have with that data, and what you can do with it. Okay, the next thing is have some form of data strategy. Okay, know why you need your data. Okay, so if you're collecting data, okay, you need to know why you're doing it. Or if you're hiring a data scientist, you need to know why you're hiring that data scientist to work with your data. Okay, you need some form of data strategy. It doesn't have to be, again, a comprehensive document. It could be, just a statement or a vision statement where you say, look, our data strategy is to make sure that our customer experience is the best that it can be, and we're going to use data for that. Okay, at least you now know why you collect your data. And then finally, have a clear approval process. Okay, like I said, when you bring in data scientists, they'll be knocking on doors because they want to do things that probably have not been done before. You need to know who needs to sign off, who has the ultimate sign off in making sure that this happens. And this goes back to the people part of having key sponsor and also getting it on the CEO's agenda. The next thing is make sure that in terms of technology, your data is easy to extract. So like I said, if you have a reporting function already, then you probably already have this in place. But if you don't, make sure that if you're going to hire a data scientist, that you talk to your IT team and say, look, if we wanted to extract this data, can we do this? And see what they say. If it's like, oh my God, no, the system sits here, we're going to have to connect this and do that and install this, then there's a lot of work going on, and get that work done before you hire a data scientist. The next thing is make sure that you have the technology for analysis. Okay. Now this may seem obvious, but data scientists need to have sort of more powerful machines, laptops, PCs than probably everybody else in the organization. So you don't want to give them a laptop that sells you. So you may have a corporate policy that says everybody gets the same laptop, and it's based on what a salesperson needs, where they may just do a bit of basic Excel on there, and that's as powerful as it needs to be. Okay, data scientists they're going to do much more hard, intense processing, so they need hardware that can manage that. Now, you either give them a laptop to do that. If you can't, then you need to make sure that there's either an on-prem cloud infrastructure, an on-prem data center server, or a cloud server that they can log into and utilize cloud services in order to run more complex and more intense analysis. And the second thing is software. There'll be certain software that data scientists will need, and you need to make sure that they have that. And that leads on to my next point about technology, is that you need to make sure that you have the ability to download and use open source software. So especially this applies mainly for corporations, not necessarily to smaller organizations. But if you're a corporate, you may have a policy on your machine where you can't download software that's not been authorized. What you'll find is that data scientists use a lot of open source technology, things that aren't really proven, and they need the flexibility to be able to download that and be able to use that software. Okay. So just some key things. So if you are thinking of hiring data scientists, here are some key things that you should consider. Okay. So the first thing is, does your organization currently use data for decision making? Because if that's a no, then you need to fix that first. And that's a cultural thing. That's get your organization to develop a culture of being data driven. Okay. Does your organization have a reporting function? If it's no, you can get away with it, but it typically means that you probably don't have processes for using data on a regular basis. So that should really be a yes, but you can get away with a no. The next thing is your IT team, or if you use a supplier, able to extract your data easily to answer simple business questions? So a simple question, if you have customers in your business and you ask your IT team or your third-party supplier, I would like to know in January 2021, how many customers did I have who transacted with me? Okay, if they can't run that very quickly and very easily, then you probably have a problem with being able to extract data easily. Okay, so if they can't answer simple business questions or queries, then you need to make sure that's in place before you hire a data scientist. And then finally, before the final one, does your organization innovate or change? Okay, because one of the reasons you want to hire data scientists is because they want to move the organization forward. You want them to be able to make changes, drive the business in different directions based on what the data is telling you. And if the organization doesn't have a culture of change and innovation, they've been doing the same thing for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, then you are going to struggle when you bring in a data scientist, that they won't be able to have an impact. And if data scientists can't see the impact of their work, then it's likely that they will get frustrated or they will leave. And then finally, are you agile? Okay, are your technology, are your systems, are your process agile? Because a lot of the time, they may find something that's actually quite time sensitive that you need to deploy it within a certain period. These things very quickly, that the business can deploy these things very quickly. So ask yourself these questions. Most of them should be yes. If you've got one or two no's, then especially if you've got two no's, I would think about correcting those before you go on to hire your data scientist. Okay, so to conclude, here are some key takeaways. Okay. Like I said, only hire a data scientist if you already have some kind of data function in the team, whether that's basic reporting. Like I said, it could be reporting by, someone in the finance team, someone in the IT team, wherever it is, but you've got some data function, okay? And that means that data is being used by the organization for some reason, okay? That means that you already have a culture of using data for decision making. The next thing is make sure you have a senior sponsor. Okay, this is very key. One of the challenges that data scientists find is that they become an island within organizations, especially if they're the first hire or they're one of first couple of hires. They need somehow to break through barriers or get people to agree to things. And this is where having a senior sponsor makes a big difference. That they can go to their manager, can go to the senior sponsor, or their manager could be the senior sponsor and get things done. Okay, so they may want data from IT. IT are like, oh, we've got a backlog. We'll get to your request in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. That won't work. Okay, the sponsor needs to make sure that these things are prioritized, that they're balanced off against other business needs, and that the data scientist gets the data that they need. Okay. The next thing is make sure that your data is easy to extract. Now, this is such an obvious thing, but a lot of businesses don't have the capability sometimes to extract the data easily, because if they haven't designed the system in the first place to do analytics, then they won't necessarily have the capability to extract that data. And typically you find it's because they don't have a data strategy. So have a data strategy, which will mean that this is why we're collecting this data. So therefore, when you're collecting the data, you know that you need to do something with it. So therefore, you'll make sure that your systems allow for data to be easily extracted. Okay. The other thing is make sure your IT allows for R&D type work. So sometimes, especially again, it's not so pertinent in smaller companies, but in large companies, IT follows a very rigid process of releases and making sure that things are tested. But data science work, by nature of it, is going to be a lot of R&D. They're going to test stuff, and they want to, like, for example, they might want to do testing live on the website. They want to do a bit of A/B testing or multivariate testing to get the data that they need to run their analysis or to build their data product. And if IT can't allow for R&D type work because they're like, oh my God, you have to go for the release schedule. The next release scheduled in 6 weeks, but you're not scheduled in, so therefore you'll be in 12 weeks. That's too slow. You're going to miss the boat. So make sure that IT has the agility type work. And then finally, before I finish my presentation, have realistic expectations, okay? You will hear a lot about what data science does. You'll hear about machine learning. You'll hear about businesses making lots of money or improving customer experience or improving conversion, okay? That typically happens after a lot of hard work. There's a lot of failures going on. There's a lot of learnings going on. Okay, so have realistic expectations of what's going to happen when you bring the data scientists in. Don't expect that after 3 months they're going to revolutionize something and it's going to double revenue within the business or double customer acquisition. These things rarely happen. Okay, businesses that do case studies on that, the nature of them being case studies is because they were things that they're willing to talk about. They're exceptions rather than the norm. The norm is that a lot of what data scientists will do will be things that don't have a big impact but have an incremental impact that makes the business go forward. Okay, so that's that from me. These are my details if you'd like to know more about setting up data functions and data analytics functions. But thank you very much for listening to the presentation. Thank you.